Tomorrow morning, 8 billion people wake up and check their phones. Every single one of them has $1 billion in their account. Not a glitch, not a scam, real, spendable money. The question isn't what would you buy? The question is, what happens to the world in the next 6 months?
I already know what I'd buy.
Nobody asked.
I ran the numbers on the way here. We're cooked.
Let's walk through this. Let's start at hour 0. It's 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Every bank account, every digital wallet, every financial app on the planet updates simultaneously. $1 billion deposited. What happens first?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. For about 2 hours, nothing happens. You know why? Because nobody believes it. 8 billion people open their banking app, see 10 digits, and assume it's a glitch. They screenshot it, post it online, and go back to bed. The first reaction isn't spending, it's confusion.
He's actually right. The banking infrastructure alone would be in freefall. Most legacy banking systems use 32-bit integers for balance fields. A billion pushes past what some of those systems can even display. You'd have accounts showing negative numbers, overflow errors, apps crashing. The Bank of America app? Dead. Chase? Dead. Every fintech startup? Gone. It's not just money appearing, it's a software apocalypse.
So I'm a billionaire, and I can't even check my balance. Great start.
But eventually, someone tests it. Someone always tests it.
By noon, someone walks into a car dealership. They try to buy a Lamborghini. The transaction goes through. That's the moment everything changes. Because that story goes viral in minutes. And now 8 billion people know the money is real. Now think about what happens to demand. Every human on Earth suddenly has the same purchasing power. Every single person wants the same stuff. Luxury goods, houses, cars, first-class flights. Demand doesn't double. It doesn't triple. It multiplies by a factor of thousands.
Cool. How does a normal person survive this?
They don't. Not the way they're used to. By hour 12, smart sellers stop accepting cash entirely. Why sell your house for $1 billion when your buyer's billion is about to be worth nothing? Listings come down. Dealerships close their doors. Stores lock up. The money is real, but nobody wants it anymore.
Okay, but what if that also breaks? Here's what nobody's thinking about. The global money supply was roughly $100 trillion before this happened. We just added $8 quintillion. That's 80,000 times the previous money supply injected in 1 second. The dollar doesn't inflate, it evaporates. It's not worth less, it's worth nothing. Weimar Germany took years to reach hyperinflation. Zimbabwe took months. We just did it in an afternoon.
And that's when it gets interesting, because this isn't a financial crisis anymore. This is a systems crisis. Every contract denominated in dollars is now meaningless. Every debt, every mortgage, every salary, every government budget, wiped clean. Not forgiven, just irrelevant.
So we're all billionaires, and we're all broke at the same time.
Now you're getting it.
Let's move to day 3. The initial panic has settled. People realize the money is worthless. But something else has happened. That's far more dangerous. Slick, what's the workforce looking like?
Gone. Completely gone. Here's the psychology. Even though the billion is worthless, the feeling of having it isn't. Nobody who saw 10 digits in their bank account is showing up to their 9 to 5 the next morning. Truck drivers aren't driving. Factory workers aren't assembling. Farmers aren't farming. The entire global supply chain runs on one assumption, that people need to work to survive. Remove that assumption, even temporarily, even as an illusion, and the machine stops.
I mapped the supply chain dependency tree. It's terrifying. A single missing link shuts down everything downstream. No truck drivers means no food deliveries. No food deliveries means grocery stores are empty in 72 hours. No grocery stores means people start competing for what's left. And here's the fun part. The backup systems all require the same workers who aren't showing up.
So a weekend, we're not talking about money anymore. We're talking about food.
Exactly. And food becomes the new currency.
This is where it gets interesting for me. Within 2 weeks, local barter economies spring up everywhere, and they're wildly inconsistent. In a rural area, a dozen eggs might trade for an hour of carpentry work. In Manhattan, a can of beans is worth what a Rolex used to be. Here's where the money is. Whoever figures out the exchange rates between these microeconomies first becomes the new middleman, the new banker, the new me.
Of course you'd find a way to be a middleman in the apocalypse.
It's called providing a service.
It's called being a vulture.
Actually, both of you are thinking too small. The real play isn't barter, it's energy. Whoever controls electricity controls everything. Because without power, there's no refrigeration, no water pumping, no communication, no hospitals. Power plants need workers too, and most of them walked off the job on day one. Within a month, you're looking at rolling blackouts across every developed nation.
Now let's talk about governments. They've been scrambling since day one, but by month 2, they have to act. What are the options?
Option 1, declare a new currency. Abandon the dollar, the euro, all of it. Start fresh. Problem is, who trusts a government that just let their currency evaporate? Option 2, asset-backed currency. Tie the new money to something physical. Gold, energy reserves, water, but that requires controlling those assets first. Option 3, and this is the scary one, martial law. Force people back to work. Guarantee rations in exchange for labor. Essentially, rebuild the economy from scratch, with the military as the enforcement mechanism.
So the options are start over, go back to the gold standard, or the army makes you go to work. Fantastic.
Most governments would choose a combination of all three. Emergency currency backed by national reserves, enforced by martial law. But here's where it fractures, because not every country has the same reserves. Not every country has the same military strength. The playing field that was already uneven just got tilted completely. 6 months in, the dust is settling. What does the new world look like?
Completely redrawn. The old economic powers, the US, EU, Japan, they actually suffer the most. You know why? Because their wealth was mostly digital. Financial instruments, stocks, bonds, derivatives, all of it was denominated in currencies that no longer exist. A country like the United States had enormous GDP on paper, but paper burned. Meanwhile, resource-rich nations that were considered developing economies, Russia with its oil and gas, Brazil with its farmland, Australia with its minerals, the Democratic Republic of Congo with its cobalt, they're sitting on the only things that matter now, physical stuff.
So the global power structure inverts.
Completionally. Saudi Arabia isn't just rich in oil anymore. They're the new America. Sub-Saharan Africa, with 60% of the world's arable land, goes from poorest region to most strategically important overnight.
So the $1 billion didn't make everyone equal. It just reshuffled who's on top.
That's the cruel irony. Every attempt to equalize wealth by just adding money has the same result. You can't equalize by inflating. You can only equalize by redistributing what already exists. And nobody wants to do that.
Nobody's gonna like what I'm about to say. While all of you are talking about oil and farmland, you're forgetting something. The internet didn't die. Servers are still running on backup power and skeleton crews. And in the chaos, something interesting happened. Cryptocurrency, which also collapsed initially because it was priced in dollars, starts getting adopted. Not Bitcoin or Ethereum specifically, but the concept. Decentralized, trustless currency that doesn't require a government to back it. Communities start creating local digital tokens. Neighborhoods, towns, cities. Each one with its own coin, backed by whatever that community produces.
So we went from one global financial system to 10,000 local ones. That's not progress, that's the Middle Ages with Wi-Fi.
Exactly, and here's the thing, it actually works better than what we had. Because these microeconomies are backed by real output, not speculation. A farming community's token is worth something because it's backed by actual food. A manufacturing town's token is worth something because it's backed by actual products. For the first time in history, money means something tangible.
Until someone figures out how to speculate on the exchange rates between these tokens.
Already priced in. Let me pitch you something.
And there it is. Took us 6 months to rebuild the economy and 30 seconds for Slick to break it again.
Here's what fascinates me. We've seen this before. Not at this scale, but the pattern is identical. After the fall of Rome, Europe fragmented into exactly this kind of system. Local economies, local currencies, local power structures. We call it the Dark Ages, but it was really just a reset. The old system was too centralized, too dependent on a single currency and a single power structure. When that collapsed, what emerged was messy, violent, and chaotic. But it eventually produced the Renaissance. The question isn't whether civilization rebuilds. It always does. The question is how long the dark period lasts and how many people suffer through it.
I ran a simulation. Best case, 5 years of chaos, then a new global standard emerges. Worst case, 50 years of fragmentation, multiple regional wars over resources, a generation that grows up without stable institutions.
And all because someone thought giving everyone money would fix things.
Final question. After everything we've walked through, was the $1 billion a gift or a curse?
Long term, accidentally a gift. I hate saying that because the short term is a nightmare. But think about it. The old system was broken. Wealth inequality was at levels not seen since the Gilded Age. Debt was out of control. The financial system was a house of cards, built on derivatives nobody understood. This scenario didn't just burn the house down, it burned the blueprints. Whatever gets built next has to be built on something real, and that's not nothing.
I agree with Slick, and I feel weird about it. The technology that emerges from the rebuild would be insane. When you have to redesign financial infrastructure from scratch, you don't rebuild what existed before. You build something better. I already built a prototype. Decentralized identity, trustless transactions, AI-managed resource allocation.
Can I say something? You two are talking about long-term systems and technology. You know what I'm thinking about? The single mom who can't feed her kids in week 2. The elderly guy whose medication supply chain collapsed. The family in a city with no power and no water. You can talk about Renaissance and new systems all you want. Real people suffer in the gap between the old world and the new one. And that gap could last years, decades. So no, I don't think it's a gift. I think it's the most expensive lesson humanity ever learned.
Brick's right. Every systemic collapse has winners who write the history books and losers who don't survive long enough to read them. The $1 billion was a match. Whether it lit a bonfire or burned a village depends entirely on where you were standing when it landed. Here's what most people get wrong about money. They think more of it solves problems. It doesn't. Money is just a story we all agree to believe. And the moment everyone has the same amount, the story stops making sense. Wealth was never about the number in your account. It was about what you can do that others can't. Skills, resources, knowledge, labor. That's real wealth. Everything else is just paper or pixels. The $1 billion didn't create equality. It just reminded us that equality was never about money in the first place. Checkmate.